It was Halloween night, and I was alone in my house, sitting on the couch and watching a scary movie. I had decided to stay home instead of going out with my friends because I was tired and didn't feel like dressing up. As the movie ended, I heard a strange noise coming from outside. I got up and walked to the window to see what was causing the commotion. To my horror, I saw a group of people dressed in black robes and chanting something in a strange language. I immediately felt a chill run down my spine and knew that something was wrong. I tried to ignore the noise and went back to my couch. However, the chanting grew louder, and I could feel the energy of the group outside starting to affect me. Suddenly, the lights in my house flickered, and the TV turned off. I was plunged into darkness, and I could hear footsteps approaching the door. I tried to make sense of what was happening, but my mind was overloaded with fear and confusion. I heard a loud knock on the door and hesitantly walked towards it. When I opened it, I saw a group of people outside, but they looked different from before. They were wearing masks, and I couldn't see their faces. The group forced their way into my house, and I tried to run, but they blocked all the exits. Their chanting grew louder, and I felt a sense of dread fill the room. One of them walked towards me and whispered in my ear, "Welcome to the Halloween ritual." I couldn't understand what was happening, but I knew that I had to escape. I tried to fight them off, but they were too strong. I was completely alone, trapped in my own house with these strange, masked figures. As the night went on, the group continued their chanting and rituals, and I was powerless to stop them. It was the longest and most terrifying night of my life. When it was over, I was left with nothing but the memory of the horror that had taken place. Now, every Halloween, I lock myself in my house, terrified of what might happen if I venture out. The memory of that night will always haunt me, and I'll never forget the terror that I experienced. I had never been a huge fan of Halloween, but my friends always convinced me to go out and celebrate. This year, we decided to do something a little different and check out a new haunted house that had opened up in town. I was hesitant at first, but I agreed to go along with it. The haunted house was located in an abandoned circus tent on the outskirts of the city. As soon as we entered, we were greeted by a group of creepy clowns. I've never liked clowns, and these ones were particularly unsettling. Their makeup was smeared on their faces, and their eyes seemed to follow our every move. As we made our way through the maze of dark corridors, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. The air was thick with an eerie atmosphere, and I started to regret ever agreeing to come. My friends didn't seem to notice, laughing and joking as they made their way through the haunted house. As we turned a corner, we came face to face with a group of clowns armed with weapons. They cornered us, and their laughter grew louder and louder. I was frozen in fear, unable to move. One of my friends tried to run, but the clowns caught him and dragged him away. We were left alone in the darkness, and the only sound we could hear was our own heavy breathing. Suddenly, a clown appeared in front of us, wielding a chainsaw. We screamed and ran in different directions, but to no avail. The clowns seemed to be everywhere, and there was no escape. I found myself trapped in a room with no windows and only one door. As I frantically searched for a way out, I noticed a faint light coming from underneath the door. I cautiously approached it and peeked through the crack. To my horror, I saw rows of seats filled with clowns, watching me intently. My heart raced as I realized I was the main attraction in this sick circus. The clowns continued to laugh as they closed in on me, their weapons at the ready. Just as they were about to strike, I woke up in my bed, drenched in sweat. I told my friends about the terrifying nightmare, and we all agreed to never go near that haunted house again. But sometimes, when I'm alone at night, I can still hear their manic laughter and the sound of a chainsaw in the distance. I could feel the chill in the air as I walked down the dimly lit street, my heart racing with excitement and fear. It was Halloween night, and the town was buzzing with energy as people walked around in their costumes. There was a strange energy in the air, something ominous and unsettling, that made me feel uneasy. I tried to brush it off, reminding myself that it was all in my head. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. As I walked past an alley, I heard a faint rustling sound. I turned to look, half expecting to see a trick-or-treater hiding in the shadows. But what I saw instead made my blood run cold. A figure stood at the end of the alley, dressed in a bright pink and green clown costume. Its face was painted with ghoulish makeup, and its long, curly hair was dyed bright red. The clown stared at me, its eyes intense and unblinking. I swallowed hard, trying to maintain my composure. But as the clown began to walk towards me, its movements jerky and unnatural, I realized that I was in serious danger. I turned to run, but the clown was fast. It was on me in seconds, its cold hand gripping my shoulder. I turned to face it, but as I did, something strange began to happen. The clown's face seemed to melt and blur, twisting into strange shapes and emitting a terrible screeching noise. I felt my legs give out from under me, and I fell to the ground, my heart pounding in terror. As the clown loomed over me, I realized that I was trapped. This was no ordinary Halloween prank. This was something truly sinister. I closed my eyes, bracing myself for the worst. But as I did, the clown disappeared in a puff of smoke, leaving behind a faint smell of sulfur and decay. I sat there in shock for a moment, still trying to process what had just happened. The streets were empty now, the other trick-or-treaters gone. As I got up to leave, I knew that I would never forget this Halloween, or the terrifying clown that haunted my dreams for years to come. It was Halloween night, and I was getting ready to attend a party at my friend's house. I had chosen a theme of a clown for my costume. It seemed like a good idea at the time, but as the night went on, I started to feel uneasy about my choice. As I walked to my friend's house, I noticed that the streets were eerily quiet. But then, I heard a distant honking sound that slowly got louder and closer. My heart started to race as I realized that it was coming from a clown car. I tried to ignore it and keep walking, but the car pulled up beside me and stopped. The clowns inside the car stared at me with their clown faces and yellow teeth. They started honking their horns incessantly, and it seemed like they were trying to scare me. My heart was pounding in my chest, and I felt like I was going to have a panic attack. I tried to run, but they quickly got out of the car and chased after me. I could hear their laughs and honking sounds, echoing through the empty streets. I didn't know where to go, and I was too scared to look back. Then, I saw a light shining in the distance, and I ran towards it. It was a small diner that was mostly empty, except for a few people sitting at the counter. I rushed inside and locked the door behind me. As I sat there, shivering with fear, I noticed that the clowns were outside the diner. They were taunting me through the windows with their creepy smiles and honking sounds. I felt like I was trapped, and there was no escape. Suddenly, the clowns broke through the window and stormed inside. I screamed and tried to fight them off, but there were too many of them. They dragged me out of the diner and threw me into the clown car. I woke up later in a dark and creepy circus tent. The clowns were all around me, laughing and taunting me. They were dressed in even creepier costumes than before, with bloodstains on their jackets and in their hair. I knew that I had made a terrible mistake by choosing a clown costume for Halloween. The clowns had somehow sensed my fear, and they used it against me. I was stuck in the middle of a twisted and terrifying nightmare that would never end. I woke up on Halloween morning to find a small clown doll sitting on the edge of my bed. I couldn't remember ever buying it or where it came from. I brushed it off and left for work, forgetting all about it. That evening, I decided to go to a Halloween party with my friends. It was held in an old, abandoned circus tent on the outskirts of town. When we arrived, I immediately felt uncomfortable. The atmosphere was eerie and the decorations seemed too real. One room was covered in cobwebs and skeletons, while another was full of old circus performers' costumes. As the night went on, I started to see more and more clowns around the tent. The guests were dressed as them, and some even had masks that looked like the small doll I found on my bed that morning. I joked with my friends about how creepy it all was, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Suddenly, the lights went out, the music stopped, and all I could hear were footsteps and the sound of laughter. I felt a tap on my shoulder and turned to see a clown staring at me, his face painted in a permanent grin. I tried to run, but he grabbed my arm. I screamed for my friends, but they were nowhere to be seen. As the clown pulled me deeper into the circus tent, I could hear his evil cackle echoing around me. Suddenly, I was thrown into a small dark room and the door locked behind me. It was a maze of mirrors, and I couldn't find my way out. As I stumbled around, I realized that the mirrors were distorting my appearance more and more until I looked like a clown myself. I started to panic, but the worst was yet to come. In the corner of the room, a small creative place caught my attention. It was a clown repairing his costume. I realized then that this clown was not a friendly one. He had a sinister smile and his eyes glowed red in the darkness. I was in the clutches of a real-life horror movie villain. I screamed as he came closer, but he didn't say a word. He just laughed and held up the small clown doll that had been on my bed that morning. I realized then that something had cursed me and brought me here, to this haunted circus tent. I'm writing this now as a warning to anyone else who might cross paths with the scary clowns this Halloween. Beware, because they're not what they seem. They are not here to make you laugh and smile. They are here to take you away from everything you know and love, into the darkness where you're never seen again.